So it's National Savings Month and every cent counts these days, no doubt. Many households in the country are under immense pressure. What with the high unemployment rates and the pandemic, pressure is no doubt mounting. If you're lucky enough to have a disposable income, make hay while the sun shines. Joining us now to find ways on how to save on your banking fees this July, we're joined by Kavek Fox, Managing Executive at Everyday Banking, Absa Retail and Business Bank. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much, Kavek, for joining us. You have a number of steps that an individual can take in terms of making that buck go longer. I'd like us to start maybe with discounted banking for positive balances. What are we talking about there?
Good afternoon. Yes, I think there's a number of offers out there in the market. So what that means is that, and you can have to look at the different bank offers. If you maintain a certain average positive balance in your account, you'd qualify for discounted banking charges.
So for somebody who, you live by borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, sometimes when the money does come in, you're already on a minus. Is there a trick or a hack that you can possibly help with there?
Well, I think if you, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, I think the biggest thing you can do is really to get in control of your finances. And you always get back to the boring but essential and very important practice of setting up a budget, understanding, what your income is, what your expenses are, and then having the daily discipline to stick to that budget. And at the end of the month to see how you've done in that regard. So it's important to have a record of your transactions and, to in control of your finances. Otherwise, your finances will control you.
Isn't that the truth? So when you say manage your ATM activity, what are we talking about there?
So I think, cash is still prevalent, and cash has got a lot of costs, not only bank charges, but it takes cost to get to an ATM. Cash is not safe. You have to take time out to do it. So I think my first tip would be to try and avoid cash. There's so many electronic options nowadays. It's not just about paying with a debit or credit card, but you can pay with your phone through tap to pay or your QR scanning codes. You can pay if you're lucky enough to have a smartwatch or fitness tracker. You can pay through those. So there's many ways to transact digitally and avoid cash altogether. But we know that's not always possible. But I think when it comes to the cash that you have to use, it's very important again to look at the banking product you're on. Many of these bundled offers allow you a certain number of ATM transactions of value that's included in that fee. So with a bit of planning, you can make sure you stay within those parameters. That's part of your product that you've chosen, and you don't go over because you're doing too many ATM transactions. Just plan to do a few less and stay within those for maybe larger amounts. And then also to look for, if you plan properly for those ATM transactions, you can plan to make sure you do it at your own bank's ATM, which typically is a lot cheaper than another bank's ATM, or potentially at point of sale at certain retailers, which is another cost-effective way to access cash if you have to.
And how do I unlock value through life stage-specific offers?
I think the market offers across different life stages a number of offers. So if you look at the youth and the student segment, many banks offer very, very discounted pricing there. In fact, some of them are altogether free banking for youth and students. And then if you go to the other end of that spectrum, from a senior's point of view, and this can be from 50 years up or 55 up, again, the banks offer discounted pricing in that segment. In fact, I'm close to that, and I've got mixed feelings about whether that's a good or a bad thing. But if you qualify for the discounts, take them by all means. And then in the middle, there's the family banking offers that many banks offer, where if you look at it holistically from a family point of view, you can get discounts for your spouse or for your children. So it just takes a bit of planning, research, to make use of these offers, and you can save you quite a bit over time.
On that point of the family banking benefits, what about sponsoring a loved one's fees? What does Absa offer where that is concerned?
So Absa offers what we call Bank on Me service, which allows you to sponsor somebody. So, for example, if you've got a family member and you want to help them out because maybe they go through some distress or whatever, they can make use of the Bank on Me service, and which effectively means you pick up the banking charges on their behalf, and you can make use of that service if that is what you want to do with a family member.
And what about the use of electronic or self-service channels? I think you touched on it briefly.
Yeah, so electronic channels are a lot cheaper than going to a branch. So if at all possible, you've got access to electronic channels, which is internet banking or the banking apps. You got to make use of those. They will bring your cost of banking down fundamentally compared to going into physical infrastructure like branches. And then I think some added benefits there is on the banking app for AppSoft, for example, we offer free digital fraud warranties. So if you're on our banking app, which we believe is the safest way to bank, you get free warranty on certain digital fraud transactions that may happen. In this day and age where fraud syndicates are becoming more and more sophisticated by the day.
When you speak of the banking app, there's a term here that you use, keys to the safe, and protecting the keys to your safe. How?
Yeah, so what we refer to keys to the safe is really your login credentials. So that is your PIN, your passwords, and that sort of information. And you need to think of those similar to if you have a safe in your house and you've got keys to those. You've got to look after those, because if you give them away, anybody can open your bank account and like they can rob your safe. So I think that's an easy way to think about it. What we are seeing is an increase in social engineering. This is where syndicates obtain a lot of information about you all over the place. And then they phone you impersonating the bank and convince them. They're very convincing because these are organized syndicates. And they convince you that they're from the bank and, there's something happening on your account that they need to stop, or there's an imminent transaction that's going to go off against your account and they're here to help you. And they scare the living daylights out of people. And then when you're in that position, they will ask you to participate, to help them to try and protect you. And they will ask you to do certain things, hand over the pins or passwords, and people get duped into doing it, and the next moment, they log in and take your amount. So very important that you don't do that. No bank will ever ask you for that information. And for me, the simplest tip to anybody is if anybody calls you that you don't expect, you're not busy transacting, or they ask for the keys to the safe, just put down the phone and immediately phone back at the bank on the number that you've got for them to make sure you're speaking to the right party. And you can pick up the conversation with the bank if it's in fact real, or they will tell you, no, it wasn't us.
Right. And this one is a sticky one for a lot of us, right? Where a debit order will bounce, and when money does get into your account, you incur costs. How do you avoid this?
I think, again, it goes back to the point of being in control of your financial matters and planning. We see a lot of debit orders going off at random times during the month. Instead of being placed just shortly after you've received your income or your salary, because you want your salary to come in, then your debit orders to run because there's funds available. But we do see debit orders sometimes run 2 days before your salary date, and then people don't have sufficient funds. So just planning it and getting them in the right sequence to ensure there's funds is critical, because when the debit order bounces, it can attract fees, but it's more than that. That debit order is there to pay for a service. So if it's your insurance, for example, you could lose your cover, or whatever service you're paying for. So, you want that transaction to be successful, and just, make sure they're scheduled on days where there's a high probability that you would have funds, which is typically in a couple of days after you normally receive your income.
Kavek, just maybe in closing up the conversation, you'll have someone that says, I'm really, really in a tight spot. So no matter how much I try to save, yes, July is National Savings Month, but I really am unable to. Even if I have 500 Rand, how do I take out a Rand from there, and what value will that give me to save?
Yeah, that's not a simple question to answer. I would start by saying, firstly, I know, it's tough out there. We're all feeling the pains of the economy. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people have reduced income. And I often hear people saying, I don't have enough funds to save, or I'll save, if there's something left at the end of the month. And that approach doesn't work. You've got to build savings into your budget. You've got to save before you start other expenses, if you can afford it all. And you need to adjust that from time to time, because, sometimes they're going better and sometimes worse. But you've got to plan to save. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. There's never money left at the end of the month, unless you plan for it. And then if you've got a little bit, get into the habit. Saving's a habit. You can change the amounts as you need to, but you've got to stay in the habit like anything else, and you've got to teach that habit that you save. And then where you save and the return you get is really a function of your risk appetite. And I would suggest you speak to somebody who's got knowledge. If you don't have, whether it's your banker or financial planner, if you've got access to one, because you can go from risk-free savings where the returns are lower to taking more risk where the returns can be higher. But then you've got to be comfortable and understand the risk you have. And if you're going to go in that space, make sure you get the right support and advice.
You have to plan to save. Kovek Fox is the Managing Executive for Everyday Banking at Absa Retail and Business Bank. Thank you.